So I also, I have been making a lot of friends on trail, and trail friends are a lot of fun. I'm not really hiking with a specific group of people, but it's like every day is a new set of like trail family, or every week, especially in between towns. There's only like, I mean, unless you're gonna, if you're staying at shelters, there's really only so many options for like a mileage game plan. So you're either gonna like, yeah. So you end up seeing the same people for about a week or two at a time. You're staying at the same shelters and stuff. So that's always a lot of fun. I had a cool, great group of people that I was hiking with from like the Nantahala Outdoor Center to Gatlinburg when I got picked up for the for a wedding, and then picked up off trail and spent some days off trail, and then actually hiked some miles with a friend closer to Damascus. I'm gonna skip those miles now, but since I've already hiked them. But so since then, since Gatlinburg, so 250 miles ago or a few weeks ago, I was originally like trying to catch up with everyone. I was like, I can do this. I'll just put in a few miles. They're gonna take a zero. Hot Springs are gonna do this. They're gonna do that. I won't take any zeros, and I almost killed myself. It was like I went hard. I pulled like 3 almost 20-mile days back to back to back. It was like 19.8, 19.9, 19.5 or something like that. So, and my body was like, no. So I stopped. And then once I stopped trying to catch these people, like, and took a minute and like looked around, I was like, oh, there's cool people here too. So that's been a really interesting discovery for myself. Is just like, it is nice to have a group of people to hike with. Not hike with, but you know, you're gonna show up at shelter and your friends are gonna be there and it'll be fun. You can kid around. You don't have to like meet new people, which can get exhausting, but I think it's exhausting for everyone, so other hikers don't like judge you. We talk about like trail time, like 2 days on trail is like being best friends for like a year. So you just make connections really quick. Oh, and I was also going to talk about missed connections. So there is this girl on trail who I've never met. Her trail name is Peach. Mine is Peaches. Before Gatlinburg, before I got off the trail, I would see her journal or her like shelter log entries, and I'd be like, there's this other person named Peach, and some people had met her that I would meet, and they'd be like, oh, I'm Peaches, I met a Peach, like blah 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 blah. And I'm like, man, it would be like fun to meet this person who has a similar trail name as me. And so as I was approaching like Gatlinburg, I was getting like super close, like I was gonna catch her, and not intentionally, but just, you know, that was just the way our schedules were working, and I was like, yes, this will be awesome. And then I got off trail before I could catch her, and I thought for sure, you know, I was off trail like for a week, so I did 20 miles up of the trail north of there. But I was off trail for a week, so I thought for sure she would be very far ahead of me and I would never catch her. But lo and behold, apparently someone told me she went to Trail Days, which is like a 3-day hiker festival in Damascus. So she took 3 zeros basically. Anyways, so how did it work? Gosh, I'm trying to think. So I had a really bad day, just whatever, not to get, I had a really bad day. Took a zero, an unintended zero, and then the next day I was like, if I don't get on trail, I'm never gonna get on trail. So I hiked 5 miles out of Irwin, Tennessee, and just slept at a shelter all day. So I'm in a bad mood. I'm laying in the shelter. I'm reading sleeping, reading, laying there. And people keep coming into the shelter, like popping in for lunch and then moving on. And this girl and this guy pop in and they're chit-chatting, they're eating. I don't introduce myself. I'm like half asleep, half reading, like I said, in a bad mood. Don't really want to talk to anyone. And then that's it. And then the next day I hike out of the shelter pretty early. I'm doing a almost 22-mile day that day. It's my biggest day. And I pass them in the morning, say hey. I think I was actually crying, so I was just pretending that I wasn't. But I pass them, say hey, whatever, and as I'm like coming up to the shelter for my next shelter for the evening, I bump into a guy I hadn't met before, but he passed through the shelter yesterday. His name's Delta, blah, blah, blah. We get to chatting while we're having a snack. And I'm like, I'm Peaches. And he's like, oh my gosh, I know a Peach. And I'm like, of course you do. Where is she? A bajillion miles ahead of me. And he's like, yeah, I stayed at Uncle Johnny's hostel in Irwin with her yesterday. I was like, what? Yesterday? How in the world? What? Skirt. And I was like, so then I was telling him the story, like, oh my gosh, I thought she was like miles ahead of me. I've never met her. I was trying to meet her, like, because it'd be cool because we have similar trail names. And, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, they should be hiking with me, but we got like 5 miles out of Irwin and they realized that they forgot something. And it must have been important. I don't know what it was. So they hiked back and then hiked out again. Ooh. At least that's what Delta said. So, I think. Anyways, they had to go back to the hostel for something. And so they weren't hiking with Delta anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was trying to think of all the girls I saw, which was not that many. There's not that many out here. And I thought of the girl who popped into the shelter with this guy for lunch. And I was like, dude, Delta, does she have like the biggest pack in the whole world? And he was like, he started laughing. He was like, yeah, it weighs like 40 pounds or something. And I was like, oh my God, I heard her talking about that. This girl. I was like, that was Peach. We sat 5 feet from each other and didn't introduce ourselves, didn't say hey, didn't realize who we were. So, later that week, in a different shelter, I decided to write in the log because I knew she writes in the logs all the time. I like to write in them too sometimes. But I wrote a Missed Connections article. I posted a picture of it on my Instagram, but basically I have no idea if she's gonna see it or not. But I wrote it. It was super funny. Just like a Craigslist ad, like, hey, girl at the Curly Maple Shelter, blah, 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 blah. Are you Peach? I'm Peaches. Sorry to introduce myself. It was really funny, and I thought that would be the end of the story. And then, gosh, was it last night? No, night before last night, sitting at a camp, making a fire, and this dude rolls in, is just chit-chatting. He's like, he's moving through, but he stopped for a breather or a snack or whatever. And introduces himself. He's like, hey, I'm Jesus. I laugh. And I was like, oh, hey, I'm Peaches. And he was like, dude, I saw your Missed Connections article. So freaking funny. Also, I know as of like yesterday or the day before, her plan was to stop into that shelter. And she always reads the logs and stuff. And I was like, yes. So hopefully she'll see it. It's pretty funny. I don't know. I had a lot of fun writing it and thinking about it. But I don't know. It's funny. I don't know if I'll ever meet her. I mean, I'm sure I will. We have to. But so far, it's been like 400 miles and we haven't met each other. And we started around the same time. So, but yeah. So, funny story. But I'd love to, I still haven't, I've met back up with a couple people that I was hiking with before I got off the trail for the wedding. Just a few of them, but I'd love to like bump into them again. I actually inadvertently, well, there was no intention either way, but I actually ended up passing 2 of the dudes I was hiking with. They went into town one day, and I didn't. So as they go into town, I kept hiking, and someone told me at a shelter, I was like, hey, have you guys seen Awesome or Happy? And they were like, oh yeah, they're like back like 10 miles in town, like blah blah blah. They stayed at the hostel last night. Like they might be taking a 0. I was like, what? So now I'm ahead of them. It's just it's weird. It's weird how things happen like that. You just like flip flop, and you can go weeks without seeing people, even though you're so close. But yeah, I guess that's an update on trail friends and misconnections.